Hello. Welcome to an episode in a series that I don't know how to name yet. Feel free to fall asleep at any point in this video. Disclaimer: this is for ASMR purposes only, and by extension, entertainment purposes only. I am not a historian. My research is based off of 4 original translated sources, all in the public domain, and 1.5 sources from Wikipedia. This essay is my own interpretation. All of my sources are in links in the description below. To give you a little background as to why I am making this video, I was struck with inspiration because I have a calendar that gives me one trivia question per day. And I quite enjoy these trivia questions, but sometimes they can get a little iffy in one area or another. And several weeks ago, the question asked who wrote the original Cinderella. Now, I knew that there were many versions of Cinderella previously written, but the calendar said that the answer was Brothers Grimm. I wasn't particularly satisfied with his answer just because I knew that Cinderella was first based off of folklore. But another piece of inspiration was 2 nights later when my family took me out for my birthday dinner, and I brought up the Cinderella question to the table. My sister did not like the answer of Brothers Grimm, and she reasoned that the original was Charles Perrault. And both of us knew there was nuance to this question. And that got me wondering, what would be considered the original Cinderella? So that's when I started to research this topic, and that gave me the inspiration for this video. Slight warning: there will be a lot of common themes, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I feel as though that might be impossible. So first, let's talk about what we think about when we think of Cinderella. So we have the character of Cinderella, who has a wicked step family for whom she is a servant. There is a prince who has a ball, and the stepfamily is invited, but Cinderella is not. But Cinderella goes anyway, thanks to her fairy godmother, who helps her prepare. She attracts the attention of the prince, and then runs off at midnight, loses her glass slipper, and then the prince comes looking for her to see who the shoe fits. Can you tell I didn't rehearse this? Anyway, that's what we think about when we think of Cinderella. I've had conversations with multiple different people, and every once in a while they will ask me, did you know that in the original fairy tale they did this thing with their feet and there were birds at the end? All of whom were referring to the Brothers Grimm version and comparing it to the Disney version. To that, I say that Disney's version wasn't really even based on Brothers Grimm version in the first place. It was based off of Charles Perrault's version, which is kind of what my sister was getting at when we were having this conversation. And Perrault's version came well over 100 years before Grimm's version. However, I will draw connections from the Disney version to both Grimm's version and Perrault's version anyway. And when I'm done with those 2 versions, please sit tight. I have a lot to go through tonight. This document that I wrote, that I'm looking at right now, is over 300 words long, and it's in point form. These are speech notes. This is not a script. I wrote this all in 2 days. this was somehow this was somehow a passion project. I don't know how, but yeah, I enjoyed researching this. So, anyway, the Brothers Grimm version, released in Germany in 1812. The original title is Aschenputtel. It begins with Cinderella's father falling sick. And with her father now very unpresent, her stepfamily took advantage of that and decided to rid Cinderella of all her nice things and force her into servitude. At the same time, there was an announcement for a 3-day festival held so that the prince could find a bride. She didn't have a nice dress to wear, Cinderella that is, so she went to her mother's grave and she cried. There, a bird delivered a dress to her to wear. Bird dropped it down. So now, she could go to the festival. The first day of the festival, the prince danced solely with her. The prince, I guess, liked what he saw. At night, Cinderella wanted to go home after having a nice time at the ball, and the prince said, "Let me go with you." Cinderella was embarrassed by her life as a maid, so she fled. She got a distance away from the prince, got rid of her dress, and then disappeared, and the prince could not follow her. The second day, she once again went to her mother's grave, and the bird delivered onto her an even prettier dress. And the same thing happened. She went to the festival. She mingled with the prince. When she went to leave, the prince wanted to follow her. She was still embarrassed. She got rid of the dress and disappeared. On the third day, I want to say the same thing happens, but it's a little different. The bird delivered the prettiest dress so far, and this time it came alongside a pair of golden shoes. So she went to the festival on the third day, had a nice time with the prince, then went to leave, just like before. But the prince, however, had preemptively laid pitch all over the staircase so that when she would go down the stairs, she would lose a shoe. Like, I have a question, like, yes, you can lay pitch to trap someone's shoe, but, like, how did she get up the staircase? She would have to walk over that, unless there are multiple staircases. I don't know, but, like, it wasn't really explained, like, the floor layout of the castle, but, I mean, I would have thought that she would have had to lose the shoe going up, but what do I know? Anyway, she lost a shoe on the sticky staircase, and then the prince used this shoe to go around and see who the shoe fits. And you might already know, because apparently so many people already know this, that when the prince came to try the shoe on the stepsisters' feet, the stepsisters had actually cut off parts of their feet so the shoe would fit. This did not work because the prince is not stupid. He could obviously see, you cut off your feet. Why did you do that? But then the rest is pretty straightforward. Cinderella tries on the shoe, it fits, she and the prince get married, and then a bunch of birds rip out the stepsister's eyes. Yeah, that's, that did not happen in the Disney version. You may recognize this specific version from the 1987 Broadway play Into the Woods, as well as the 2014 Disney movie of the same name. This is not the original story. Not even close. We've only scratched the surface. Like I said, Charles Perrault was the author of the version on which the Disney's 1950 Cinderella was based. Perrault's version was titled Cendrillon, and it was released in 1697. We're going back hundreds of years. Hundreds. But we're not there yet. So, Cinderella's father remarried when her mother had died, and after the wedding, the stepmother, who was nice at first, began to show her true colors. So yeah, obviously we gotta have a stepmother who isn't very nice, making Cinderella the servant for her and her daughters. And of course, there was a royal ball so the prince could find a bride. That much is pretty well given. Cinderella wasn't ready to go. The stepsisters were like, "Don't you want to go?" And Cinderella was like, "Don't patronize me. You know you're just going to make me look bad." And of course, I'm just playing that up. The actual line was, "Alas, you only jeer me. It is not for such as I am to go to such a place." Although, like, the way I interpreted that, there were undertones that suggested the former. But she really did want to go. So, her fairy godmother came and helped her prepare for the ball, turning a pumpkin into a coach, mice into horses, a rat into a driver, and a lizard into footmen. Now, you see the similarities to the Disney version. She was given a pretty dress and shoes made of glass, and she was told to be back before midnight. So she goes to the ball, and she shows off her beauty to the prince, as well as her stepfamily, who didn't even recognize her. Yeah, she was like, "Hey, look how pretty I am," and her stepfamily was like, "I don't even know who you are." So, at 15 minutes to 12, she ran off and arrived home before midnight. Wasn't expecting that, were you? Anyway, she thanked her godmother so much and told her that the prince had invited her back tomorrow. And her stepfamily arrived home after her and were like, "Oh, you should have been there." And of course, they were teasing her. They didn't even know that Cinderella was there, even though Cinderella was like, "Look at me, I'm pretty." Anyway, the next day, she wore another dress. I'm seeing a pattern here. And her glass slippers, and this time at the ball, she was enjoying herself so much that she had completely forgotten about her curfew. So the clock had struck midnight, and you might know what happens here. She runs off because it's her curfew, and during the escape, not really an escape, I don't really know. During her exiting, she loses her glass slipper, and then the prince goes looking for the one on whom the shoe fits. And this plays out exactly how you'd expect. So, like, the prince goes to the stepsister family, it doesn't fit on them, and then it fits on Cinderella, and they live happily ever after. And people like to say the Brothers Grimm version was original. I don't know, I'm just having fun. So while Disney's version was based off of that specific version by Charles Perrault, Disney did have many liberties. So first and foremost, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. That is an iconic song. Disney created it. Another feature were Anastasia, Drizella, Lady Tremaine, and the very iconic Prince Charming. In Perrault's version, these were not the names of any of these characters. In fact, they didn't even have names, according to my source anyway. One of Cinderella's stepsisters was named Charlotte, and the others were unnamed. In the Disney version, the stepfamily is actively trying to sabotage Cinderella. At the beginning, the stepsisters tear up Cinderella's dress, and that's what causes her fairy godmother to intervene. And then at the end, the stepmother actually breaks the glass slipper so that it could not fit onto Cinderella. But of course, Cinderella had the other slipper in the Disney version, so the prince was able to see that, "Oh, you're Cinderella, yay." I don't know why I said it like that. This one probably goes without saying, anthropomorphic mice. Yeah, pretty much. And one very subtle one very subtle difference is the purpose of the fairy godmother. In Disney's version, she was just another character and was there to drive the plot. And she was a very fun character, I will admit. In Perrault's version, the godmother is explicitly representative of divine reward. And yes, this is a religious story. And a slight difference to the endings. In Perrault's version, the stepsisters repent and Cinderella forgives them and lets them live in the palace with her. In Disney's version, they're just left in the dust. And last thing, the Disney version, the ball only took place during one night, whereas in Perrault's version, it was 2 nights. But the story doesn't end here. Perrault's version is said to have been inspired by Cenerentola by Giambattista Basile. Now, Cenerentola is an Italian story, same concept. And this one was posthumously published circa 1635, about 60 years before Perrault's version. And I do say circa because the exact date is not quite known. So this story follows a girl named Zezola, and it starts off with Zezola dropping a chest lid onto her stepmother and snapping her neck. Okay. Not exactly. Yes, that does happen, but here's the actual start. So Zezola's father is a prince, and he married a wicked stepmother. The governess, I looked up what this means. It's like a nanny, I guess just someone who lives with the prince, I guess. The governess is named Carmosina, and she sees how bad this wife is and coerces Zezola to commit foul play, which she does. And like I said before, Zezola snapped her stepmother's neck with a chest lid. So now with her gone, Zezola's father remarries, this time to Carmosina, who later turns out to be even more wicked. Oops. Zezola was then demoted. I guess that's the word I use. She was demoted in favor of Carmosina's 6 daughters. So she was stripped of her luxuries and forced into servitude. She also gets renamed to Cenerentola, but for simplicity, I will continue to call her Zezola. So her father had to go to Sardinia for business, and he asked his 6 stepdaughters each individually what they wanted when he returned. So they all gave their separate answers, asking for expensive things, and when he asked Zezola what she wanted, it wasn't in a loving, fatherly way. By asking her this in the position that she is now in, it was basically like mockery, and he knew that the question, like no matter what what the answer was, he was like, oh my god, I'm not getting that for you. But anyway, Zezola declined and asked for nothing. On her father's venture, he found his way to the Grotto of Fairies, where he was given a magic date tree to bring to his daughter, even though she had asked for nothing. The tree had the ability to magically change clothes and summon a coach with coachmen at will. So with this magic date tree, it allowed Zezola to go to any royal ball of her choosing, because she had the part, she had the pretty clothes and the coach, and yeah, she had everything. So she decided to dress up using this magic date tree and attend a ball that her stepsisters were also going to, and her goal was to show them up. As luck would have it, the king also attended this ball. A different king, not the prince's father. Different king. And the king saw Zazola and immediately fell in love. But Zazola left the ball too soon, and the king said, "I call upon my servants to find this girl." Kind of stalkerish, if you ask me, but that's the story. So she attended another feast where the king also attended, and once again she left before the king could introduce himself. So he sent his servants after Zazola, and they even chased her with their own coach. And so they're going down these dirt paths on horses and carriage. And in this chase, the bumpy ride caused Zazola to lose a shoe. And this version actually doesn't specify what material the shoe was made out of, but presumably it's a golden shoe, because all the other ones are gold. And then, you guessed it, the king goes around trying to fit the shoe onto every girl he can find. And then, when he finds Zazola, he makes her his queen. So is that the answer? Is that the original Cinderella? Probably not. We have more to get through. Quick honorable mention. There is one story called Eteriani, which is a Georgian story of the same ilk that was written circa 10th century. It's not quite Cinderella, even though it was kind of described as Cinderella. But, yeah, I won't be going over this one. But I will be going over one called Xiàn, which is a Chinese Cinderella. It was written circa 850 to 860 in China by Duan Chengshi. Please forgive me for my pronunciation. I'm not very good at Chinese tones. This Cinderella story is about a girl named Xiàn. Her father had 2 wives, her mother and a woman named Qin, who had a daughter of her own named Chun-Li. Yes, Chun-Li, like the Street Fighter character. Both of Xiàn's parents had died, so she was being looked after by Qin, her stepmother, who forced her into servitude. Who'd have guessed? Xiàn would escape her stepmother by going to the lake, where there she befriended a huge fish, bigger than her. And this fish had golden eyes and could talk, and it turned out that this was a guardian spirit sent by her mother. Here's where it gets a little bit complicated, though. So I say it's a big fish because the English Wikipedia article said that it was a huge fish. But the Chinese Wikipedia said that it was a tiny goldfish with golden eyes. Either way, the fish could talk. The fish was magic, and honestly, it really doesn't matter how big the fish was. I just wanted to point out that contradiction. But from here on, I will be summarizing this story in a way that agrees with both articles, which, believe it or not, is for the rest of it. The rest of it agrees with each other, except for the ending, but I'll get to that in a moment. One day, Chun-Li sees Xiàn talking to a fish, and she is angry that Xiàn is happy. So, she puts on Xiàn's clothes to trick the fish into surfacing so that she could then catch the fish and serve it for dinner. I have 2 questions here. First of all, how do you serve a goldfish? In the Chinese version, it's a goldfish. It is too tiny to serve as dinner. Secondly, if it is a big fish, which I choose to believe it is, because that's an easier fish to serve, you can't catch a fish like that without some kind of mechanism. I don't know. That one singular part really bothered me for no reason other than the fact that how do you actually do this? But anyway, I digress. So now she's pretty sad that her fish friend is gone. So she's upset. And while upset, she was visited by the spirit of her ancestor, an old man. And he tells her to bury the fish bones because they're magic. Because of course they're magic. So she plants them in a pot next to her bed. So there is an upcoming festival, a New Year festival, where the maidens are expected to find husbands. Xiàn forces Xiàn to stay home so that Chun-Li's chances to find a husband would be a lot better. Xiàn then makes a wish by talking to the fish bones in the pot, and her wish was granted, and she was given a vibrant green dress. I'm wearing green, coincidentally. Oops. Way more vibrant than this. And along with this pretty green dress was golden shoes. So she goes to the festival and attracts the... Did I just hit my camera? Oops. And she attracts the attention of a lot of men. But since Chun-Li is also at this festival, she sees Xiàn and is like, that looks like my sister. And, of course, Xiàn realizes that Chun-Li recognizes her, so she leaves, goes home, and she loses a shoe on her way out. Of course she does. I told you there was going to be a lot of Cinderella in this video. Like, what did you expect? Anyway, she goes home, and then Xiàn and Chun-Li return home later, but they don't draw any conclusions because they weren't sure that it was Xiàn at the festival, and then when they got home, Xiàn is there, so they just don't jump to any conclusions. So anyway, back to the shoe. A local finds it and then trades it, where the shoe ultimately falls into the hands of the king of an island called Tuohan. I'm probably mispronouncing that, please forgive me. The king was absolutely fascinated by this shoe and set out to find who the shoe fits. He didn't even see who was wearing the shoe in the first place. He just saw the shoe and liked it, and was like, I must find this woman. He must really like shoes. Anyway, he fails. Plot twist. Yeah, no one in his kingdom could fit into this shoe. Obviously, they didn't try everyone. Anyway. Because he couldn't find the woman, he then imprisoned the man who sold him the shoe, claiming that the shoe was stolen in the first place. And here comes the ending, the inconsistency. In the English article, Chun-Li is one of the women who tries on the shoe, so that is how Xiàn knew where the other shoe was. So then, when the king puts the shoe on display at a pavilion, he was waiting for someone to claim it, so Xiàn does just that. And then she was arrested because the king's men thought that she was trying to steal the shoe. So she was brought before the king, and then she explained how she got the shoe. She was let go. She was allowed to return home, but she also took the other shoe with her, so she now had both shoes. The next day, the king had summoned her. So she wore her green dress and gold shoes, and in this outfit, when before the king was infatuated by her beauty, and then marries her. The end. The English article does list two different endings, one where Xiàn and Chun-Li die and are buried in a temple, possibly becoming higher powers who grant wishes. I didn't bother to read that ending. And there was also one where Xiàn and Chun-Li are invited to the palace where Queen Xiàn orders them to be slaves, because, of course. So now let's look at the ending of the Chinese article. So where we left off and where the inconsistency started is the man who had sold the king the shoes was just imprisoned because the king thought the shoes were stolen. So now, after no one could fit into the shoe, the king just discards the shoe on the roadside and starts raiding houses looking for the other shoe, which they find in Xiàn's quarters. They also find the dress, and the king liked the dress. So he married her? I don't know. That's what the article said. It's probably there's got to be something missing. Like that's got to be a translation error. I don't quite get it. But anyway, this version is the version where Qin and Chun-Li die, and it actually explains how they die. They were bludgeoned with a rock. Yes, that's how they died. Anyway, that's Xiàn. Are we done yet? No. There's one more. And this might just be the origin of all the Cinderellas. It is called the Greek Rhodopis, and it was first recorded circa 63 BC, over 2,000 years ago. And despite being written then, the lore possibly dates back to the 16th century BC, even further back. In the story, there are a lot of Greek names. I will do my best to pronounce them. But here is the entire passage of Rhodopis as from a translated rendition of Strabon's Geographica. Here it is. Let's go. On proceeding 40 stadia from the city, one comes to a kind of mountain brow. On it are numerous pyramids, tombs of kings, of which 3 are noteworthy, and 2 of these are even numbered among the 7 wonders of the world. For they are a stadium in height, a quadrangular in shape, and their height is a little greater than the length of each of the sides, and one of them is only a little larger than the other. High up, approximately midway between the sides, it has a movable stone, and when this is raised up, there is a sloping passage to the vault. Now these pyramids are near one another and on the same level, but farther on, at a greater height of the hill, is the third, which is much smaller than the 2, though constructed at much greater expense. For from the foundations almost to the middle it is made of black stone, the stone from which mortar is made, being brought from a great distance, for it is brought from the mountains of Ethiopia, and because it's being hard to and difficult to work into shape, it rendered the undertaking very expensive. It is called Tomb of the Courtesan, having been built by her lovers. The courtesan, whom Sappho the Melic poetess calls Dorija, the beloved of Sappho's brother Charaxos, who was engaged in transporting lesbian wine to Nafkratis for sale, but others give her the name Rhodopis. They tell the fabulous story that, when she was bathing, an eagle snatched one of her sandals from her maid and carried it to Memphis, and while the king was administering justice in the open air, the eagle, when it arrived above his head, flung the sandal into his lap, and the king, stirred by both the beautiful shape of the sandal and the strangeness of the occurrence, sent men in all directions into the country in quest of the woman who wore the sandal, and when she was found in the city of Nafkratis, she was brought to Memphis, became the wife of the king, and when she died was honored in the above-mentioned tomb. Now, we're done. This rabbit hole has been navigated. And that's all the Cinderella stories I feel I need to investigate. So does that really answer the question of what was the original Cinderella? I mean, all the different stories are there, but I mean, Rhodopis is very, very different from Cinderella in our minds. And as a quick reminder, the Cinderellas that we know of, the Disney version, was largely based off of Perrault's version. And yes, Perrault's version was based on Basile's version, so I guess a good question would be, where do you draw the line? After listening to all of these versions, different versions of Cinderella, who created the story of Cinderella as we know it today? Where do we draw that line? And here's my answer. Disney. Disney made the Cinderella as we know it today. And the reason I give this answer is because Disney told the story in a way that stuck with us more than other tales. Like I mentioned, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo is iconic. The characters, especially Prince Charming. That trope of finding your Prince Charming, it came from Disney. And the glass slipper, yes, Perrault had it. And you can say that, like, he was like the original inspiration. The story, as we know it, all things considered, was made by Disney. And I think that this is an adequate conclusion to this essay. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. More than I expected, I enjoyed researching this topic, and now I'm sharing it with you. So, awesome. I didn't get any comments on my last video. Please, comment as much as you want. Ask me questions. I would absolutely love to answer them in the next video. But with that, I think I've covered everything that I want to cover. Please stay tuned for 2 more minutes, as I do have bloopers. But that's going to be it from me. Bye-bye. It starts off with Zazola dropping a chest lid on her mother and snapping her neck. Stepmother. Her stepmother. She dropped the lid on her stepmother and snapped her neck. Oh man, I messed that one up. Her father had 2 wives. Her mother and a woman named Jean. Chin. Yeah, and a woman named Chin. Chin? Oh my god. Oh, this is gonna bother me. And Chin. Her name is Chin. Chin. For they are a stadium in height, a For they are a stadium in height, are quadrangular, okay. Though constructed at much greater expense, for from these... God, I can't.